A truly innovative idea in gaming is hard to come by. Because of this, when a game comes out that really breaks the mold, there are always going to be more unoriginal developers who see dollar signs and attempt to pump out a lesser but similar release in order to capitalize on the trend. This is particularly the case when a game happens to capture the imagination of casual players, with rip-off titles hoping that parents wouldn't be able to tell the difference when they go to the shop to pick one up. After all, while they do say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, the majority of these titles do little to praise the source materials they so clearly took a little too much inspiration from. With that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 10 video game rip-offs that still messed up what they copied. 10. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Super Smash Bros. In a vacuum, the concept of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is a brilliant one, bringing together an all-star cast of some of the most recognizable characters to feature in Sony's library. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was set to be a revolutionary gaming concept. Unfortunately, the game was released in 2012 and not 1998. So rather than being groundbreaking, it was pretty much literally just Sony's Super Smash Bros. Now, to be fair, you can't call a game necessarily bad just because it's similar to another game. All-Stars BR is bad because it's got a tiny roster, particularly when compared with its competition, and a lame super moves mechanic that made battles more tiresome than exciting. Now, it's not really awful, it's just that there are so many other good fighting games to play, like, for example, Smash. 9. Nova Halo. One of the primary problems for developers when taking a little too much inspiration from one of the most beloved gaming franchises of all time is that you really have to hit it out of the park to ensure people don't just see your game as an inferior ripoff. Though Nova was actually a pretty good game when considering the hardware of the platforms it was released on, the fact that the game was a spitting image of the Halo series meant that comparisons to the critically acclaimed giant were never going to be favourable. Again, Nova isn't actually that bad of a game, but unless you want to be judged by the standards of one of the greatest franchises in the medium's history, it's probably best not to make your imitation quite so on the nose. 8. Hello Kitty Seasons, Animal Crossing. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Animal Crossing is the lack of emphasis on, well, just about anything. Animal Crossing is all about that relaxed approach, allowing the player to progress at their own pace and very much prioritizing the journey over the destination. With the Nintendo franchise being so popular, it was maybe inevitable that other titles would pop up. And so we come to Hello Kitty Seasons on the Nintendo Wii. The principal difference between the two games is that while Animal Crossing is easy by conventional standards, it's still undeniably engaging, filled with life and character. Hello Kitty Seasons, on the other hand, includes an almost pointless level of hand-holding throughout, making the entire experience feel just kind of boring. While HKS was obviously intended for a younger audience, it doesn't make the painfully simplistic title any less of a disappointing cash grab. 7. The Great Giana Sisters, Super Mario Bros. With the success of Super Mario Bros., it was inevitable that clones would flood the market offering similar side-scrolling action. Ported to just about every non-Nintendo platform, The Great Giana Sisters was one of many Super Mario Bros. Clones available on the market at the time, but went one step further than its many contemporaries by including an opening level that practically mirrored its iconic counterparts. Much like some of the other games featured on this list, The Great Giana Sisters wasn't necessarily terrible, but when you're fighting Super Mario for the positive light, you're gonna come off worse. Rumours even swirled that Nintendo took TGGS publisher Rainbow Arts to court, but while this wasn't actually the case, the game was still eventually withdrawn from sale due to copyright issues, likely to the surprise of absolutely nobody. 6. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, Mario Party. It might seem weird that one Nintendo property would try so blatantly to rip off another, but yet, here we are. But that's not to say Amiibo Festival didn't have some potential in the early days. It could have been successful in bringing a Mario Party-like experience within the more relaxed world of Animal Crossing. Unfortunately, while Amiibo Festival shares a number of qualities with other party games, it somehow misses out the number one principle of the Mario Party series. It's supposed to be fun. Instead of being a frantic experience to enjoy with friends, Amiibo Festival is an agonizingly slow slog around an unimaginative board that completely fails to capture the charm of the Animal Crossing franchise. 5. Miner of Duty, Minecraft. it's hard to deny just how revolutionary Minecraft was for the gaming industry in the early part of the 2010s. The sandbox caught the imagination of players everywhere, with the delay in bringing the game to home consoles leading many developers to attempt to fill that gap with their own knockoffs. As any who browsed the Xbox 360 marketplace back in the day can attest, terrible rip-offs were rife on the platform, but perhaps none were quite as egregious as Miner of Duty, that attempted to rip off not one, but two hugely popular franchises, neither very successfully. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Miner of Duty sucks, combining clunky FPS mechanics with lifeless feelings of adventure. Though it probably deserves some slack as an indie game, Miner of Duty is truly disappointing an experience for anyone expecting anything resembling the games it attempts to copy. 4. M&M's Kart Racing, Mario Kart. Not only is M&M's Kart Racing among one of the most egregious rip-offs featured on this list, but it's also legitimately one of the worst video games ever produced. Despite featuring many of the motifs of Mario Kart as we know it, M&M's Kart Racing fails to even come close to the revered series when it comes to the actual gameplay itself being easy to control and fun to play. Bland courses, low fidelity music, and painfully slow speed were just some of the litany of complaints that disgruntled gamers had after purchasing the title. Despite Kart Racing's terrible reception, it would not mark the end of M&M's video game series, with a further 2 titles being churned out for the Nintendo Wii the following year. 3. The Simpsons Skateboarding, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. When you think about it, pretty much all of the iconic Simpsons games from the early noughties borrow pretty heavily from established franchises. In fact, Road Rage was so similar to Sega's Crazy Taxi that a lawsuit was filed against EA before ultimately being settled before going to court. Likewise, the beloved 2003 Hit and Run was pretty much Grand Theft Auto reskinned for a younger audience. However, the reasons those games do not feature on this list is despite sharing similarities to other titles, they are fundamentally enjoyable experiences on their own. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about The Simpsons Skateboarding, which was so terrible that it genuinely is in the conversation for being one of the worst games ever released. It was burdened with terrible controls and terrible graphics, leaving the resulting romp a lot more like Fat Tony than Tony Hawk. 2. Westworld Mobile, Fallout Shelter. With just how critically acclaimed almost every Fallout has been, it's surprising that the most blatant rip-off of Bethesda's post-apocalyptic franchise rips off the Fallout mobile title rather than any of the main series games. One can only imagine that the people behind the Westworld TV series realized just how profitable a mobile game based on the show could be, but rather than build something from scratch, because, that takes so much effort, they decided to just clone whatever happened to be top of the app stores at the time. Westworld Mobile was such a shameless rip-off of Fallout Shelter that you would have been forgiven for thinking that it was little more than a fan-made reskin of Bethesda's game. Bethesda's legal team also noticed the similarities, and a resulting lawsuit quickly put an end to Westworld Mobile's brief, miserable existence. 1. Chex Quest, Doom. The concept of a game ripping off the core tenets of the 1993 classic Doom is nothing new. I mean, you can basically argue that every and any first-person shooter game that exists is on some way or another a rip-off of the original Doom. Many of the quote-unquote clones that came out after Doom, though, were actually really good games in their own right and continued to push the boundaries of the medium. Others, though, not so much. Enter Chex Quest, basically a reskinning of id Software's masterpiece with replaced textures and toned down ultra-violence to appeal to the primary school-aged market. Originally distributed as a pack-in for Chex cereal, the game is about as good as you would expect for something that came out of a breakfast box, with contemporary critics criticizing it for being as close to a carbon copy as legal restrictions would allow. Of course, there is a minor upside though, which is when you completely down to the letter rip off one of the greatest games of all time at that point, the result is not going to be too horrible. Despite being panned in the video game press, Chex Quest was a marketing triumph and maintains a cult status among fans even to this day. Although if you go ahead and actually do compare it to Doom, well, it sucks. And there you have it, folks, 10 video game ripoffs that still messed up what they copied. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDogU. You can also swing on by WhatCulture for daily news, lists, articles, and quizzes, and all that other funky internet stuff. I'm Will for WhatCulture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.